Hey there, and welcome to today's daily premium newsletter for the weekend of June 3rd, 2018. So what started as a seesaw week between the bulls and the bears ended with a small bull rally, leaving us up 25 billion for the week, but still down 100 billion from where we were a month ago. Importantly, the volume remains low and is indicative of the brutal emotional toll the extended bear market has taken on the spirits of the average trader. That being said, June could present an opportunity to reignite that interest. This week we saw two of the biggest mainnet releases ever, Tron and EOS, the latter of which brought in a massive amount of buying. The good news is that there's more high-profile mainnet and testnet launches this month, including VeChain, Zilliqa, Ontology, and Eternity. Granted, each one of these are suspected to be launching this month, as their deadline for release was the end of Q2. And anyone who's been around software development knows that delays are the norm, not the exception. That being said, continued developments such as these could serve as a catalyst for renewed enthusiasm in the community, and serve as a fitting declaration to the world that crypto is not dead. And this could not come at a better time, as centralized systems clearly were in the crosshairs this week. Visa, which handles over 150 million transactions a day, reported card payments experienced disruptions across Britain and Europe on Friday. In comparison, Bitcoin's completely decentralized network has been up nearly the entire time it's been in existence, having launched January 3rd, 2009. Between network outages such as this and data theft like the 1.5 million Visa and MasterCard customers who had their identities stolen in 2012, customers should have little trust in centralized systems that continue to fail them. Meanwhile, this week's big headline concerned President of China Xi Jinping and his open praise of blockchain technology. Xi gave blockchain as an example of a new generation of technologies producing breakthroughs. Sure, the Chinese government has every reason to love blockchain's authoritarian implications, but he's not wrong. Artificial intelligence, quantum information, mobile communication, Internet of Things, and blockchain are all some of the facets of this new technological renaissance. The initial computing revolution of the 90s digitized information, but the new one we're just beginning will digitize assets and trust. Entire organizations will be autonomous, entire microeconomies will be powered by a decentralized ledger, and the entire human race will enter the new post-information age. Just like how blockchain isn't about Bitcoin, what we're on the cusp of isn't solely about blockchain. It's about breaking down and building up new, more efficient jobs, companies, industries, economies, societies, and governments. It's about adapting old methods and systems to work in additional advanced ways. It's about making our cars, our houses, our cities work more competently and in ways that better our lives. Isn't that worth pursuing? When you see that it's about more than allowing people to pay for their groceries faster and cheaper, a whole world of possibilities opens up. Blockchain is one of the most important innovations of this century, and in time will rightfully take its place among other innovations that push us higher and further. So for his thoughts on today's market, I'll turn it over to Doc. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
Hey folks, it's Doc for ReadySetCrypto looking at Bitcoin here on the daily chart. The question on the table is this a viable bounce? Is this a tradable bounce? Or perhaps is this the bottom? Well, we'll try to answer that latter question here first before we get into some of the deeper dive of analysis. So we have a descending pattern. There we go. There's a descending pattern breaking to the upside. So this is what we're looking for, what we've been kind of training our eye to look for, because we've been going down to things like the 4-hour chart over the last couple of weeks and saying, you know, let's watch these 4-hour charts and this will give us our first indication that something's breaking to the upside. So we broke that trend line. We started to see the 4-hour chart. Let's squeeze this around so you can see it here. Starting to put in higher highs and higher lows. So this was the very first indication that something was going to happen here. Higher highs, higher lows, breaking through that trend line. Okay, so we have a short-term bottom. Let's pull out a little bit and take a larger look and see whether or not this is worthy of perhaps some longer term attention for this. So again, here's the 4-hour chart. Let's go back out to the daily chart. All right, let's rescale this a little bit. And we can see that now we're starting to bounce off the bottom. So larger time frame though, you can tell that this is just a big, just a big coil that we have here. This is just a big pennant pattern with a series of higher lows and lower highs. So each of these has been slightly, this is almost a double bottom down here, but slightly higher lows, lower highs, and so far higher lows. And what this is doing is almost like if you were to drop something off of a tall building, you'd see it go down, bounce, come back up, bounce, 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 like this. And this is the same kind of thing, is that this initial shock wave to the upside was being rejected to the downside, and then this is just kind of coiling into there as the market's right now trying to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up. So let's see what the potential is for this, and this is where I'll typically zoom back out to things like the weekly chart and even the monthly chart, if we can chart something on a monthly basis. Now with Bitcoin, we certainly can. Now I'm going to take off the Bolligers because they don't really help us here, but you can kind of see what's been going on here. That initial parabolic move into December of 2017. And then since then, we've just been coiling around in this area here. Now, we did have an exhaustion signal, so we do have some positive progress to report. We did have an exhaustion signal, just a massive exhaustion signal on the weekly chart as we got onto the end of 2017. Well, that has now been resolved. So one by one, these time frames will fix themselves. And you'll see what we're talking about here as we go out to the monthly chart. So the monthly chart is where things really have been happening. We can see that in this case, Bitstamp, we can chart this thing out to about 2012. That's good enough. We don't have to go back to the formation in 2008. And so what you'll start to see is now looking at the energy values, now it starts to make sense, because we have seen in the past, and we're going to have to move this around a little bit so we can rescale this back to those days back in 2013. 2013 had an exceptional rally just like we had in 2017. Same kind of thing. And we get into one of these super exhaustion signals down here. And oh, by the way, similar to what we saw in 2017 as well too. And notice how long it took to work off that signal. So it took the better part of a year in 2014 to work that off, to recharge that energy back almost up to full. Now, typically 55 is what I consider to be full energy for a chart. Okay, so the hard work was done there. But at this point, the polarity on this flipped to the downside because this was such a strong linear move to the downside that it actually went into downside exhaustion. Now, we haven't seen that yet on our current chart. We'll get to today's chart now. So, okay, there it is. There's that massive exhaustion signal. And this has even gone way off the scale here. But you can see that all of this non-linear action that we've had over the past few months now, 5 months and counting, has gotten this chart at least out of exhaustion right now. And exhaustion being about 38. And so we may have a few more months left to go. Before this is ready to go. Unfortunately, I wish I had better news on something like that, but this is just what the chart is telling me, not my own personal opinion. Now, one more thing before I finish with Bitcoin. This is Bitcoin on the daily chart, just price and volume. And you'll notice here's that 2013 spike to the upside, massive volume, FOMO, everybody chasing after it. And then we'd see occasional spikes as people think, oh, this is the bottom. And then they would sell into that again and, oh, this is the bottom. And that kept on going. You can see when that exhaustion signal hit right around the end of 2014. So this took a whole year to just bloody this chart. And then what we had was in 2015, it went sideways for the better part of the year. I mean, this is 9 to 10 months of sideways. And then all of a sudden, boom. Now, if you remember what I've been talking about, what does sideways price movement do? Sideways price movement is non-linear action. This is where the coil spring gets wound up tighter and tighter and tighter like that. And this is where we've built up the energy necessary for that monthly chart to start to explode higher. Right? So that's very important, is that we've got to recharge that. For all that energy spent chasing after things to the upside, you have to wind it up again. You have to wind up the spring if you want your watch to work. Now, also notice what happened here is near the bottom. Volume started to tick up. Notice how much volume started to tick up. Okay? Somebody knew something. Something was going on. Once volume hit the market, it never looked back all the way to 2017. All right, so let's contrast that with what we have going on today. How's the volume? Not so good. All right, this is not something where we're seeing sort of this surreptitious rise in volume. We're not seeing a volume divergence showing up near the bottom. Okay, so bottom line is that from a top-down perspective, Bitcoin and pretty much everything else that falls underneath it is doing what it needs to do to be able to recharge and set its feet for the next bull run. Now, when that happens, don't know. We're just going to have to keep waiting and waiting and waiting until we get the right conditions for this. We'll start to see things like we'll see energy at the higher time frames be recharged. Now, we've got that in the weekly chart. That's good. That's really good right now to see that in the weekly chart. But the monthly chart is still that parent time frame that we have in the monthly chart is still a little bit deficient there. So it may take another few months before it is ready. But right now, coiling in a triangular fashion like this is not necessarily a bad thing. This is a very typical type of consolidation. And remember that period during 2015 when it just kind of went sideways for several months. So the good news is that we don't have to go through a whole year and a half, almost 2 years of consolidation like we did in 14 and 15 before this thing can blast off. It could be ready to go within the next 2 to 3 months. Now, what's also going to happen is we're going to have to see volume coming into this. And that volume is going to come in through institutional instruments. If we start getting those ETFs and other instruments defined against Bitcoin or other assets, you're going to start to see new forms of investment and volume coming into this. And this will drive more so than anything else that we've seen to this point. All of a sudden, we'll see a strong bid underneath markets because most of these funds are going to be long only. Okay, so now let's talk about today. Is this a tradable rally off the bottom? Yes, could be a little swing. We could have something that lasts as long as 2 to 3 weeks or more. So let's play it for what it is. Let's not look forward and say, oh, but it could drop any day now. Certainly it could. But if we fix the risk on our trades. So fix the risk on your trades to a certain amount that you don't care about, and then go ahead and play. All right, let's take a quick look across the top 10 here, just really briefly. So we've talked about Bitcoin at length. Ethereum is coming up to that important trend line. So this one is starting to look good. This is almost a larger time frame flag pattern. So almost at a weekly chart, this is almost a flag pattern here setting up on Ethereum. So that is looking a little bit better. I think it's gotten over the Vitalik tweet. All right, here's Ripple. Ripple's broken the trend line. We have Bitcoin Cash has broken the trend line. We have EOS has broken the trend line, starting to get some bids there. Here's Litecoin, broken the trend line. So just about everything that we're seeing here has broken that trend line that we're talking about. And here's Stellar, broken the trend line. IOTA, broken the trend line. Tron is not broken the trend line yet. So Tron's broken into the top 10 again. And a little bit sloppy right now. And not with the volume that we would expect. And here's Neo, broken the trend line. Monero, breaking the trend line. Dash, breaking the trend line. So just about everything has broken that trend line, is looking for a little swing up. Now, keep in mind, larger time frames dominate the trend. Larger time frames dominate the trend. So what we could have is just a little pop to the upside before the gravity of that larger time frame weekly trend grabs hold and pulls us down again. So the whole nature of the game here is get in, get your fair share, get out. Now, before I talk about new swings, I do have 3 old swings that are in our inventory yet, and we're still looking to get these things off. One is Walton Chain, WTC BTC, and this one we're looking for a 0.002 exit on here. I believe the entry is about 0.00159 or 156, so we're just really close to break even right now, and still looking for that pop to the upside. This is, again, the nature of setting up these trades with a fixed risk component to them, is that if it doesn't immediately work out, I don't care. I don't have a stop for this. The stop is the position size. Here is Ontology. Ontology is doing well. Let's put the template on here. Let's do some chop. And when you have a chop index valued this high with that much energy, it's got to go somewhere. And it's working out to the upside. It's doing what it's supposed to do. My trigger for the exit is way up here at 0.0013. I think there's a good chance we may see that before too long. So that one actually is working out well and is above our cost basis for that. And then lastly, the last one we have here is ADA BTC. So this is Cardano. And this one's kind of lounging around. The entry was about 3931. 3931, so pretty close to the highs. And our target for this is all the way up here at 5. All right, so this one has got a ways to go. If we do get a pop to the upside, we'll get filled on this one again. The important thing here is we have duration over the initial direction. I have a position size that I don't care about, so if it doesn't immediately work out, it just becomes part of my inventory. I set up a good till cancel order and just wait for it to be filled. Okay, here is today's swing that I like. Today's swing is Whitecoin, believe it or not. So Whitecoin has broken a long-term trend line, had the initial flagpole setting up with a little flag pattern here, and what I have is a trend line in play. Right now, I want to see the price break above that trend line to show intent. Right now, we have enough energy to power the next move higher. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an alert on that trend line. If it's crossing that trend line, I want to show pop-up, play sound, send myself an email to say, and this is where we need to get in here and edit this and say, go long XWC BTC. Crossing the trend line. Now this may show up at 2 o'clock in the morning. This may happen in an hour. I don't know when this is going to happen. So it's important that you write yourself a little note to remind yourself why you're getting an email and what you're supposed to do with this. Now the other day we talked about Binance Coin, and Binance Coin is setting up with this great looking, and this chart is not showing it right now. Actually, let me go over just to price and volume because we don't really need this. And so price and volume, this is an ascending triangle pattern. We have a series of big time higher lows, higher lows, higher lows. This keeps consolidating, consolidating, consolidating. And right now we have a neckline, which is just about somewhere between 0.0019 and 0.002. Anywhere in there right now. It's kind of stalling. It's got some overhead supply to chew through, but we should see big time volume as it breaks through there. So that's one I'm still waiting for and watching to enter on Binance Coin. All right, folks, that is it for today's report. Have yourselves a great weekend, what's left of it, and we'll see you back here Monday evening. Take care.